Here by Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders, thanks for being here. You did not attend the speech. You watched it from your office, but you did not attend. Why not?
Because I think Speaker Boehner created a political issue where there should not have been one. As you know, under our Constitution, it is the President of the United States who leads us in foreign policy. And the idea that Speaker Boehner would invite Netanyahu to a joint session of Congress without consulting the President of the United States is completely unacceptable. And second of all, as you also know, Netanyahu is now involved in a very difficult campaign in Israel. Whether his party wins or not, we don't know. But I find it insulting that the Congress of the United States is used as a prop for Netanyahu's re-election efforts. That's wrong.
The elections are in 2 weeks, exactly 2 weeks from today, Senator. But what did you think of the substance of what he said, the concerns not only for Israel's safety and security, but for its very existence if Iran were to get a nuclear bomb?
Well, here's the point. I think, A, the President has made it very clear. I think virtually all members of Congress believe that Iran cannot get a nuclear weapon, period. The question and the debate is how do you prevent that from happening? My fear is that if these negotiations do not succeed, if the 5 nations that are currently with us negotiating with Iran fall apart, what is Plan B? What does Netanyahu have to say about Plan B? It is easy to give a tough speech about how terrible, awful, demonic Iran is. But if you break off negotiations and they fail, then Iran is on its way to build a nuclear weapon. And that is something we don't want. And then what do you do? What do you do? Well, you know what you do? You go to war. And I will tell you, as somebody who strongly opposed going to war in Iraq, and I think history will record my position as being the right position. We see all of the fallout that has taken place in the war in Iraq. What do you think will happen if, God forbid, we are in a war with Iran? What will that mean? I suspect it will mean perpetual warfare for the United States in the Mideast, and that is a nightmarish situation.
Let's posit that what you just said is correct. What does the Middle East look like if Iran gets a nuclear weapon? Conversely, is there not an existential threat to Israel and other rival countries of Iran? B, suddenly a nuclear arms race with Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Egypt trying to catch up with Iran?
I think that's a valid point. So the goal is, as the President has indicated, that we will not allow that to happen. But I think it makes a lot more sense. You know, sometimes negotiations with, in this case, a country which has some really terrible hardliners, people who hate the U.S., people who hate Israel, that's not easy stuff. And if you want sanctions to succeed or to be maintained, you've got to deal with Russia and China and the UK and France and Germany. That's tough stuff. It is a lot easier to say they are terrible, awful people, and we're going to get our way. But what is the quiet point that Netanyahu did not talk about? What happens if negotiations fail? And what happens if the United States and Israel say, you're not going to have a nuclear weapon in Iran? What happens? You have a war.
But what he basically said was that there's a step in between a failure of these negotiations and a war. In other words, an Israeli or U.S. or joint military strike. There's increased pressure. If you have more sanctions, more economic trade embargoes, that the Iranians would, especially given the lower price of oil right now, they'd feel greater pressure. They would rush back to the negotiating table. That was the point.
That was his point. Maybe, I would say that most people think that is not accurate.
Why?
Because this is a strong country that does not want to be humiliated in front of the entire world, does not simply want to be pushed around, and they may reach a point where they say, no, thank you. Forget it. We're going our way.
Netanyahu once referred to the Iranian regime as an apocalyptic death cult. Do you think the people ruling Iran are rational actors?
Let's not go there. I think if once we start, let me back up and just tell you this. Netanyahu testified, I believe, 6 months before we went to war in Iraq. And after demonizing the Iraqi government, made it very clear that he strongly supported the United States going to war in Iraq. Once we get, Jake, into this business of telling people around the world are not rational what does that lead you to? Again, it's that movement toward war that we saw going into Iraq, which has left the region much more unstable. They cost us 6,700 lives, trillions of dollars. Our job is to make sure Iran does not have a nuclear weapon, but if at all possible, let's do it without going to war. Well, let's not say these people are not rational. Well, we the only rational people in the world? So I went through that war experience. I'm the former chairman of the Veterans Committee. I have seen the cost of war. And I will tell you something else, that if, God forbid, we get into war and we spend more and more in the military, you know what else is going to happen? Some of my friends in the Congress are want to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, because we're spending so much money on war. That's in America I feel uncomfortable looking about.
Vermont Independent Senator Bernie Sanders, thank you so much. As always, we appreciate your coming and sharing your views.
Thank you very much, Senator, for joining us. A quick reminder, make sure to set your